Hi, my name is Tony Alarcon. I'm a primary therapist here at Evolutions. Let's talk about anxiety for a minute. Anxiety. Anxiety is basically the fear of the unknown. So in essence, what happens is we start to ponder things that are possibly beyond our control, and it starts to increase our anxiety levels, which can cause all kinds of different symptoms, and amongst them it sets off a lot of triggers, particularly when it comes to relapse, when it comes to dual diagnosis. Anxiety can set off all kinds of triggers in our lives and cause us to make all kinds of abrasive and knee-jerk reactions, which can lead to bad decisions in essence. How to combat anxiety, especially in this time with the pandemic and coronavirus and whatnot. How to combat these feelings. I venture to say one of the safest ways to combat anxiety related with the unknown is to make it unknown. How do we do that? For instance, what makes us nervous about this, about COVID-19? We wonder, well, what's going to happen if I catch it, right? What will I do? How do I avoid from catching it? But what we fail to realize is that a good way to reduce the anxiety in a setting such as this one, in the social climate such as the one we're currently in, would be to actually make a plan devised for if we were to contract COVID-19. What would our next move be? What would be the protocol? As we design a protocol for things that we can't necessarily predict if and when they will happen, as we design that protocol, we'll find that anxiety levels start to drop, slowly but surely. How so? Well, rather than walking around afraid, what if I catch this? What's going to happen? Am I going to die? Am I going to get sick? What about the hospital? Very simply, set up a plan of action. Let's just say for a second I were to hypothetically feel an itch in my throat or start to develop a cough, or know that I've been around somebody who has COVID, and perhaps I am now at a risk of actually contracting the virus. What do I do? Well, perhaps I go get tested. Maybe I should research and find out where are the testing facilities, where are the drive-through facilities. Take it a step further. Let's just say for a second I do manage to do this. I test positive, then what is next? Well, I go to a local hospital. Well, which local hospital? Perhaps I can make a quick phone call and find out, or research it. What is the one nearest to me? But then what will happen? Anxiety levels start to rise again. Well, perhaps we should inquire. What is the next step? Is this typically something where I would have to stay at the hospital? Or what percentage of people are sent home with certain guidelines and procedures? Once we start to actually figure out what entails our biggest fear, it becomes a little less scary, and anxiety levels will start to fall off as we create these plans for what if, rather than consistently being afraid of them and kind of pushing it off and letting it come out in our behaviors. Rather be prepared. Much like what happens when there's a hurricane in this town. We know it's coming, perhaps a week or 2 weeks. We can see it, so anxiety levels don't rise as quickly because we start to plan, right? We buy water, we think about what can we get, what non-perishables, things that won't go bad. How will we deal with if we lose the electricity? We start powering all our objects, making sure that as it arrives, our contingency plans are in effect. Well, with the coronavirus, it's no different. We have all kinds of time to plan these contingencies to reduce our anxieties. So perhaps if we go deeper into it and actually get closer to what's actually making us nervous and what's actually instilling that fear of the unknown, and make it a known, so that at the very least, we know exactly what our process is going to be, what our protocol will be if worse were to come to worse, then perhaps at that point, the worst case scenario actually becomes a far more practical thing. And then we can actually face it with courage and with process and a system, rather than anxiety and fear of the unknown. And then beyond that, I mean, there is the other side of it, which a lot of times we hear about everything that we can do externally to avoid contact, such as masks and gloves and social distancing and whatnot. But one of the things that perhaps we don't hear in mainstream media, which has a lot to do with our psyche as well, rather than being so concerned with external factors, at what point do we look inward to internal factors? Why am I feeling anxious? What is my body telling me? Is my body perhaps telling me that I could be eating a little healthier? Perhaps I could be eating foods that would strengthen my immune system. Perhaps not only can I deal with the external anxiety-causing factors, but actually double up and deal with the internal ones. That way now, not only do I have a protocol externally for what could happen if what might happen does happen, but rather, what can I also do to strengthen myself mentally and physically to prevent it, for preventive measures, or at the very least also make it part of that protocol. Well, let's just say for a second I do contract it. Now I also know that my body is in operant conditioning to actually deal with those factors. And now again, I go into the uncertain future with certain things that I am certain about. I hope this has been of assistance and might help people try to keep their anxieties in check. In times of uncertainty, there are many things that we can be certain about, and that is our involvement in building a productive plan and system to stave off unneeded anxieties.